What would you do if one small choice could change everything about your life? I used to believe only big and dramatic decisions mattered. I thought life would change in one moment, like winning a lottery or meeting someone important. But later, I learned that the real power is in the small daily choices we make, the ones that seem unimportant but quietly build our future. When I was 23, I often felt lost. I had finished my studies but had no clear plan for work. My days were long and heavy. I stayed in bed late and wasted hours on my phone. At night, I promised myself that tomorrow I would start fresh, but tomorrow always looked the same as today. I kept waiting for a big change, but nothing happened because I was not moving forward. Before we continue, I want to ask you something. Have you ever felt stuck like this, waiting for life to change but not knowing where to begin? If you have, please write about it in the comments. And if you are enjoying this story, remember to subscribe and share it with friends. Your support helps me bring you more stories every week. One winter morning, I looked into the mirror. I saw a pale face with tired eyes. I did not like what I saw. I whispered to myself, I cannot live like this anymore. That day, I made one small promise. I decided to drink 1 glass of water every morning before my coffee. It was not a big goal. It was something easy, something I could not fail. But when I kept this promise for a week, I felt a small spark of pride. It was the first time in months that I had kept a promise to myself. This little victory gave me courage. If I could do that, maybe I could add another small choice. So the next week, I decided to take a short walk every evening. It was cold, so at first I only walked around the block for 10 minutes. My face froze in the winter air, but my thoughts became lighter. Those walks gave me time to breathe and think. After some days, I noticed I was sleeping a little better. When spring came, my small choices started to grow roots. Drinking water made me choose better food. Walking gave me more energy. I began to see a small chain forming. Each choice gave life to another one. It was slow, but it was steady. No one else noticed, but inside me something was different. I no longer felt like a prisoner of my old habits. I was learning to guide myself. At the same time, I started writing 1 sentence each night before sleeping. Sometimes I wrote about my day. Sometimes I wrote a dream or a single word I wanted to remember in English. At first it felt too small. 1 sentence could not change anything, could it? But after 10 days, I looked back and saw 10 pages filled with my own words. My hand had created them, 1 small line at a time. I smiled because it was proof that small steps could grow into something real. Of course, I was not perfect. There were nights when I forgot to write, evenings when I skipped my walk, and mornings when I only drank coffee without water. In the past, I would have called myself a failure and stopped trying, but now I made a different choice. I told myself, tomorrow I will start again. That new thought changed everything. It taught me that success is not about never falling. It is about rising again after each fall. My friends did not understand. When I told them I was changing my life with water, walks, and sentences, they laughed. "That is too small," one friend said. "You need big goals if you want a better future." I stayed quiet, but inside I disagreed. They could not see what I saw. They only looked for quick results, but I felt the slow chain building inside me. Every small habit made me a little stronger. By summer, I was not the same person. My face looked brighter, my body felt lighter, and my heart was calmer. I was not rich or famous, but I was growing. My family noticed it first. My cousin asked me how I was doing, and without thinking, I answered, "I feel good. I am learning every day." That answer surprised me. Months before, I would never have said such words, but now they were true. The most important change was not on the outside. It was in my mind. I started to believe in myself again. For many years, I thought I needed luck or big plans to succeed. Now I saw that the power was in my own hands. It was in the simple things I repeated each day. Those choices were like bricks, slowly building the house of my new life. Sometimes at night, I closed my notebook and asked myself a question. Where will I be in 1 year if I keep making these choices? Where will I be in 5 years? I could not see the future clearly, but I felt something strong. I was not waiting anymore. I was not lost. I was walking one step at a time in a direction I had chosen. I still remember the exact moment I felt the truth of it. It was autumn, and I was walking in the park. The air was cool, the trees were golden, and the path was full of dry leaves. I felt the ground under my shoes, the beat of my steps, and the fresh air filling my lungs. I smiled without thinking. That smile was not because I had reached some big goal. It was because I finally trusted the small choices I was making. They were enough to carry me forward. Change did not come in one straight line. For many weeks, I felt strong and hopeful. But then there were days when old habits came back like shadows. Some evenings I sat on the sofa with my phone in my hand and wasted 2 hours scrolling. After that, I felt angry with myself. I thought, maybe my friends were right. Maybe small choices cannot change much. These thoughts pulled me down, but they also gave me another chance to test my strength. One evening, after a long day at work, I wanted to skip my walk. I told myself I was too tired. I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. Then I thought about my first choice, that simple glass of water. I remembered how proud I had felt when I started. That memory was enough to push me out of bed. I walked slowly around the block in the cool night air. It was not a long walk, but it was a victory. I learned something important that day. The size of the action does not matter. What matters is showing up for yourself. Still, I sometimes felt lonely. No one around me seemed to understand why I cared so much about these small things. My family wanted to see big results, like a new job, more money, or big achievements, but I was still building the roots. It was hard to explain to them that the roots grow before the tree. I wanted someone to understand, but most of the time I kept my journey private. One Saturday, I went to the library to return a book. I walked through the shelves and found myself in the language section. A small book caught my eye. It was about daily English practice, with one short lesson for each day. I smiled because it felt like the same idea I was already living. Small steps done every day. I borrowed the book and began reading one lesson every evening after dinner. At first, it was simple, but soon I started to enjoy it. The lessons became part of my nightly writing. This new habit opened a door for me. Learning English was something I had always wanted, but it felt too big in the past. Now it felt natural. Reading one page a night was not hard, but it gave me joy. I began to collect words in a notebook, the same one where I wrote my sentences. Sometimes I would repeat them in my head while walking. Slowly, English became a part of my daily life. After 2 months, I noticed another change. My walks became longer. At first, I walked for 10 minutes. Then it grew to 20, then 30. I began to explore new streets in my neighborhood. I saw houses I had never noticed, small shops with friendly faces, and parks full of children playing. These walks gave me a new connection to my city. Before, I felt trapped in my room, but now I felt part of something bigger. There was one evening that I will never forget. I was walking past a small cafe. The window was open, and I could hear music. Inside, a young woman was playing the piano. She looked calm and focused, her fingers dancing on the keys. People were listening quietly. I stopped and watched from outside. In that moment, I understood something. She was not great because she played one big song perfectly. She was great because she had spent years practicing small notes, day after day. My eyes filled with tears. I realized that my own small habits could also make me into someone new if I kept going. At work, small choices also began to change me. I worked in a small office, and my tasks were often boring. Before, I used to delay my duties until the last minute, but now I applied the same method. I told myself, just begin for 5 minutes. Once I started, I often kept going for an hour. My boss noticed the difference. One afternoon, she said to me, "You seem more focused these days." Her words made me proud. It was the first time someone else had noticed my growth. But life tested me again. My grandmother became ill, and I had to travel to another city to help care for her. My routine was broken. I stayed in her house, sleeping on a small bed, eating at strange times, and feeling stressed. For 2 weeks, I lost many of my new habits. I did not write in my notebook, I did not walk much, and my mind felt heavy again. One night, I sat in the dark kitchen and thought, I have lost everything I built. The next morning, I remembered a lesson I had written earlier. Do not aim for perfection, aim for consistency. So I picked up a pen and wrote one short sentence. Today, I am still learning. That was all. It was not much, but it was a step back on the path. From that day, even while helping my grandmother, I tried to keep 1 or 2 small choices alive. Sometimes it was only drinking water, sometimes it was writing 1 line. Those actions gave me strength in a difficult time. After my grandmother became better and I returned home, I realized something important. Habits are not about never falling. They are about standing up again. Even when life breaks your routine, you can start small again and rebuild. This truth became the heart of my journey. Months passed, and my notebook grew thick. It was full of sentences, new words, and small reflections. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, I opened the first pages and read them. The early lines looked weak and simple, but they were proof of where I began. They showed me the distance I had traveled. I often smiled when I read them because I knew every line was a brick in the house of my new self. One day, I shared my notebook with a friend. She had been feeling lost the way I once had. She said to me, "How did you change? How did you start?" I showed her the notebook and explained my habits. At first, she laughed. "1 glass of water? 1 sentence? That is too small." But then she looked at my pages and saw hundreds of lines. She became quiet. After a while, she said, "Maybe I can try too." That moment touched me deeply. I understood that small choices do not only change your own life, they can also inspire someone else. Later, I started to dream about the future again. For years, I had been afraid of dreams because they felt too big. but now I looked at them differently. If I wanted to travel, I could start by saving a little money each week. If I wanted to speak English well, I could keep learning one word at a time. If I wanted to become stronger, I could do a few minutes of exercise each morning. The size of the dream no longer frightened me. I had learned the secret. Every mountain is climbed one step at a time. One evening, as I sat with my notebook, I asked myself a question. Who am I becoming? In the past, I called myself lazy or weak. Now I began to use new words. I was a learner. I was a walker. I was a writer. I was someone who chose growth. Those new names gave me a new identity, and that identity made it easier to keep my habits alive. The journey was not easy, but it was simple. Each day, I asked myself to show up. Even if the step was small, even if I felt tired, I reminded myself that one action is better than none. Over time, the small steps built a new path, and that path led me to a life that felt full of hope. The real test of my new life came 1 year after I began. By that time, I was stronger, calmer, and more hopeful, but deep inside, I still carried fear. I feared that if something big happened, all my progress would disappear. I wanted to believe I was different now, but I needed proof. That proof came when I faced a challenge I had not expected. At work, my boss announced that our company would hold a meeting in English. A partner from another country was visiting, and we needed to share our progress. When I heard this, my heart jumped. I had studied words each night, but I had never spoken in front of a group. My first thought was to escape. I told myself, "You are not ready. You will fail." For hours, fear sat heavy on my chest. That night, I opened my notebook. Page after page showed me the truth. I had written words, sentences, and reflections for months. I had practiced every evening, even when I was tired. I whispered to myself, "You are ready enough. You do not need to be perfect. You only need to show up." With that thought, I decided to face the meeting. The day of the meeting came. My hands were shaking, but I took a deep breath. When it was my turn, I spoke slowly, using the simple words I had practiced. I did not say everything perfectly. I made mistakes. But I kept going. When I finished, the visitor smiled and said, "Thank you." At that moment, my fear broke into pieces. I felt taller than I had ever felt before. Later that evening, I walked home with light steps. I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who stayed in bed and wasted her days. She would never have believed this moment. She would never have stood in front of a group and spoken in another language. But I was not that girl anymore. I was proof that small choices could build a new life. After that day, I began to dream bigger. I wanted to travel abroad. It was not an easy dream because I had little money and no experience of living in another country. But I reminded myself of the lesson I had already learned. Big dreams are only small steps repeated many times. So I began with a jar. Each week, I placed a little money inside. It was not much, but it was a start. At the same time, I kept learning English. I listened to short recordings while walking. I wrote new words in my notebook. Sometimes I even spoke aloud in my room, practicing my voice. It felt strange, but it gave me confidence. I told myself, each word is a step. Each step is a bridge. Slowly, the bridge grew stronger. Months passed, and the jar became heavy with coins and bills. The day I opened it, I cried. It was enough for a ticket to another country. Not a long trip, but enough to see the world with my own eyes. I chose a place I had always dreamed of, a city full of history and language. When I sat on the plane, I remembered my very first choice, that simple glass of water. I smiled because I knew this moment had started there. Traveling was not easy. I arrived in a busy airport with signs I did not fully understand. My heart raced as I tried to speak with strangers. At times I felt small and lost, but then I remembered my habits. I told myself, take one step, speak one word, write one sentence. With that method, I moved through each challenge. I bought food, asked for directions, and even made small conversations with locals. Each small victory gave me courage. The trip lasted 2 weeks, but the lessons lasted forever. I returned home with a new mind. I no longer feared the unknown. I no longer doubted my ability to grow. I had seen with my own eyes what small choices could do. They had carried me across borders and given me experiences I would treasure all my life. Back at home, I felt a strong desire to share my story. I remembered my friend who had once laughed at my habits. I remembered the nights I felt alone with my notebook. Now I wanted to tell others that they too could change. So I began to write my full journey, from the glass of water to the trip abroad. I did not write with big words. I wrote simply, honestly, and with heart. When I finished, I showed it to a group of learners at the library. They listened carefully. Some of them smiled, some of them nodded, and one woman even wiped her eyes. After the reading, a young man came to me and said, I thought I was too weak to change, but now I see that I can start small. His words filled me with joy. I understood that my story was no longer only mine. It had become a seed for others. Over the next months, I kept sharing. Sometimes it was with friends, sometimes with groups, sometimes even with strangers online. Each time I said the same thing. Do not wait for a big moment. Begin with one small choice. You will be surprised how far it can take you. And each time someone told me that they felt inspired to try. As I look back now, I see how the chain of choices shaped me. Drinking water, walking, writing, learning words, speaking in meetings, saving coins, traveling, sharing my story. Each one looked small, but together they built a new life. A life full of hope, strength, and connection. I will not pretend the journey is finished. Every day I still face choices. Some days I succeed, some days I fall, but I am no longer afraid of falling. I know I can rise again. I know that the road is built one step at a time. And I know that as long as I keep walking, I am moving forward. So if you are listening to me now and feel lost, I want you to remember this. You do not need a perfect plan. You do not need to change everything in one day. You only need to begin with one small choice. Drink a glass of water, write one line, walk for 10 minutes, read one word. These are not weak actions. They are seeds. If you plant them today and care for them tomorrow, they will grow into a forest of change. When I think of my future now, I do not feel fear. I feel curiosity. I wonder who I will become if I keep making small choices every day. I imagine myself speaking new languages, visiting new countries, meeting new people, and sharing new stories. And I know that all of it is possible because I have already lived the proof. So I leave you with this question. What is the one small choice you can make today that will guide your tomorrow? Do not wait for the perfect moment. Do not wait for someone else to save you. Begin now, begin small, trust the power of your choices, and they will carry you farther than you ever dreamed. And before we finish, I want to ask you something. What is the one small choice you will make today? Share it in the comments, because your story may inspire someone else. If this journey touched you, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Every week I share new stories to help you learn English and grow in life. And do not forget to share this story with a friend who may need hope. Together, we can build a community of small choices that lead to big change.